When I turned 70, I set the dining room table for 8. By 9 o'clock, I understood no one was coming. And that was the night I realized I had once done the same thing to my own mother. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and tell me where you're watching from, because I never imagined my story would travel farther than the walls of the house where it began. The roast had already gone cold by the time I admitted the truth to myself. At first, I kept making excuses for them. Traffic. A last-minute emergency. Maybe my daughter Rebecca had forgotten to charge her phone again. Maybe my son Daniel got caught late at work. Maybe my grandchildren were still getting ready. I checked my phone every 3 minutes anyway. Nothing. No calls. No texts. No cheerful running late mom. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes a house feel haunted. I stood in the center of my dining room and looked at everything I had spent 3 days preparing. My best china. The lace tablecloth I only used for holidays. The crystal glasses my late husband Harold bought me for our 25th anniversary. And in the middle of it all sat a white cake with gold lettering that read, "Happy 70th. Mom, I had ordered it myself." That detail felt particularly pathetic now. At 70, you tell yourself you stop caring about birthdays. That they're just another day. That being remembered matters more than being celebrated. But the truth is, when you get older, every birthday feels heavier than the last. Not because of vanity, because you know there may not be many left. I lowered myself into my chair at the head of the table and stared at the 8 untouched place settings. Rebecca, Daniel, Emily, Marcus, 3 grandchildren, and me. I had even put little chocolate mints on their napkins because my youngest granddaughter loved them. She was 6, old enough to forget me if no one reminded her to remember. At 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. My heart leapt so hard it embarrassed me. But it wasn't family. It was a fraud alert from my bank. I laughed. Actually laughed. A dry, brittle sound that startled even me. Then I picked up my fork and cut myself a slice of birthday cake. If no one else was going to celebrate me, I could at least pretend. I had just taken the first bite when my neighbor, Sandra, texted, "Happy birthday, Margaret. Hope your family is spoiling you tonight." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, without fully understanding why, I opened social media. Maybe I wanted proof they were simply busy. Maybe I wanted reassurance. Maybe some part of me already knew. The first photo I saw knocked the breath out of me. Rebecca, smiling in a rooftop restaurant downtown. Daniel beside her with his arm around his wife. My grandchildren grinning at the camera. Cocktails on the table. Birthday balloons in the background. The caption read, "Celebrating my husband's promotion with the people who matter most. Red heart, the people who matter most." I looked at the faces in that picture. Every person I had waited for. Every person I had cooked for. Every person I had loved more than myself for decades. And not one of them had remembered or cared enough to pretend. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the china. For a long time, I just sat there. The room around me blurred. The candles burned lower. Wax pooled onto the silver holders. And something inside me cracked in a way I had no words for. It wasn't just that they forgot. It was that they had chosen not to include me. There is a difference. A brutal one. I don't remember deciding to stand. One moment I was sitting there in shock, and the next I was carrying plates to the kitchen with mechanical precision. I wrapped the roast in foil, covered the potatoes, placed the untouched rolls into plastic containers. Every movement felt distant, as if I were watching another woman clean up the wreckage of her own humiliation. The dishwasher hummed softly in the silence. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor. And then I stopped, because sitting on the corner of the kitchen counter, half hidden beneath a stack of unopened mail, was an old birthday card, yellowed at the edges, bent from years of being moved from drawer to drawer. My mother's handwriting stared back at me. "To my darling Margaret." My breath caught. I hadn't seen that card in years. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside, in the shaky script she developed near the end of her life, she had written, "No matter how old you get, you'll always be my little girl. I hope one day your family loves you as deeply as I have loved you." I sank into a kitchen chair so fast it scraped against the tile. Because suddenly, I remembered. My mother's 71st birthday. The one I had missed. The dinner she had planned. The excuses I made. The way I told myself I was too busy. The way she said it was fine. The way I believed her. I pressed the card to my chest. And for the first time that night, tears came. Not because my family had abandoned me, but because in that terrible, empty house, I understood. I had taught them how. And that realization hurt more than the empty chairs ever could. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mother's birthday card resting on my chest like a weight I had earned. Outside, rain tapped softly against the bedroom window. The old maple tree in the backyard scraped its branches against the siding the way it always had in storms. But for the first time in years, the sound didn't comfort me. It accused me. At dawn, I made coffee I did not want and sat alone at the kitchen table where Harold and I used to read the Sunday paper together. My mother's card lay beside my mug. I read it again and again. Each time, the words cut deeper. I hope one day your family loves you as deeply as I have loved you. The cruelty of it wasn't in what she wrote. It was in the fact that she had loved me that deeply, and I had still failed her. Memory is a strange thing. For years, I had told myself a version of the story that made me feel better. That I had been busy. That my children were young. That my husband worked long hours. That life was complicated. That my mother understood. But sitting there in the gray morning light, 70 years old and freshly discarded by the family I built, I saw the truth without the comforting lies. My mother had not understood. She had simply loved me enough to hide how much it hurt. I remembered her 71st birthday with painful clarity now. She had called me 3 times that week to remind me about dinner. Nothing fancy, she'd said with that soft, hopeful voice of hers. Just family. I had promised I'd be there. Then Rebecca came down with the flu. Or maybe Daniel had soccer practice. Or maybe Harold wanted us to attend some work dinner. The details blurred now, because the excuse had never mattered. What mattered was this. I had not gone. I had called her an hour before and said, "Mom, I'm so sorry. Something came up." And when she paused too long before answering, I had grown irritated. I remembered that part with a shame so sharp it made my stomach twist. "Please don't make me feel guilty," I had told her, as if her disappointment were an inconvenience, as if her loneliness were selfish, as if wanting her daughter at her birthday dinner was too much to ask. I put my face in my hands. My shoulders shook once, twice. Then I forced myself still. No, I had spent enough years making excuses for everyone, including myself. If I was going to face the truth, I would face all of it. There had been other times. So many other times. Christmases I cut short because the kids were tired. Thanksgivings I hosted but never invited her because my mother-in-law was already coming and it would be too crowded. Family vacations she wasn't included in because she wouldn't enjoy all the walking. Sunday afternoons when she called, and I let it ring because I was too drained to talk. At the time, none of it had felt cruel. That was the most terrifying part. Cruelty rarely announces itself when it wears the face of practicality. It arrives disguised as busyness, as exhaustion, as scheduling conflicts, as quiet neglect repeated so often it becomes ordinary. And children notice what becomes ordinary. They watch. They learn. They absorb. I had taught my children that old mothers wait. That old mothers understand. That old mothers can be postponed. My breath caught as the realization fully settled into my bones. They were not inventing a new cruelty. They were continuing an old one I had helped normalize. That understanding should have made me angry at myself. And it did. But beneath the shame was something else. Grief. Not for the birthday. Not even for my children. For my mother. For the woman who had sat alone at tables she prepared with trembling hands. For the phone she must have stared at waiting for me to call. For the birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays she spent pretending she was fine because she loved me too much to burden me with her pain. I stood abruptly and crossed to the hallway closet. On the top shelf sat an old photo box I had not opened in years. Dust coated the lid. Inside were decades of my life arranged in careless stacks. Baby pictures, school portraits, anniversary snapshots, and buried beneath them, a photograph of my mother standing in her kitchen, smiling beside a birthday cake. 71 candles. Only one plate on the table. My throat closed. Someone, probably a neighbor, must have taken the picture for her. Or perhaps she set the timer herself and pretended someone was there. I sank to the floor clutching that photo. And in that moment, something inside me changed. My children had hurt me. Deeply. But for the first time, I understood pain can travel through generations like inheritance. Passed down not through blood, but through example. I sat there on the hallway floor for nearly an hour before I made a decision. I could not undo what I had done to my mother. That chance was gone forever. But maybe, just maybe, I could choose what happened next. And that began with one place I had not visited in over 8 years. My mother's grave. The cemetery looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had simply grown older. The iron gates creaked as I pushed them open, the sound sharp against the quiet of the spring afternoon. A cold wind moved through the rows of headstones, carrying with it the scent of damp grass and fresh earth. I clutched the bouquet of white lilies tighter in my hand and followed the familiar path toward the far corner where my mother had rested for the last 8 years. I had not been here since the funeral. That fact alone made my chest tighten with shame. 8 years. 8 years of birthdays, holidays, ordinary Sundays, and I had never once come back. Not because I forgot where she was, because it was easier not to think about what I had lost, or what I had done. When I reached her grave, I stopped so abruptly the gravel shifted beneath my shoes. Her stone was simple, just as she would have wanted. Eleanor Whitmore, beloved mother, grandmother, friend. No mention of the years she spent sacrificing. No mention of the loneliness she endured. No inscription could have captured that. My knees felt weak as I knelt in front of the stone and set the flowers down carefully. For a long time, I simply stared. Then I whispered the words I should have said years ago. I'm sorry. The wind moved softly through the trees. No answer came. Of course it didn't. But I kept talking anyway. I should have come sooner. My voice broke. I should have come before it was too late. Tears blurred the carved letters beneath my fingertips. I thought you'd always be there. That was the lie children tell themselves about their parents. That there will always be more time. Another visit. Another phone call. Another holiday. Until suddenly there isn't. I sat cross-legged in the grass like a child and spoke to my mother for nearly an hour. I told her about Harold's passing. About Rebecca's divorce last year. About Daniel moving across town and somehow becoming farther away than if he lived in another state. I told her my grandchildren barely knew me. And finally, I told her what happened on my birthday. The words sounded pathetic spoken aloud, like the complaint of an old woman hurt over something childish. But when I finished, I pressed my hand against her headstone and whispered, "And I think now I know how you felt." That was the sentence that broke me. Not because I said it, because I knew it was true. I cried then. Not the quiet tears of restrained dignity I had shed at home. Not the polite tears of funerals and disappointments. I cried the way only regret can make a person cry, like grief and shame had merged into something too large for the body to contain. When the storm passed, I sat there in silence, exhausted. And in that silence, I remembered something my mother used to say whenever I apologized for childish mistakes. Knowing better matters less than doing better. A small thing, an ordinary sentence. But hearing it in my memory at that moment felt like instruction. I could spend the rest of my life drowning in guilt. Or I could do better with whatever time I had left. I stood slowly, my knees protesting, and brushed grass from my skirt. "I can't fix what I did to you," I said softly. "But I can stop pretending I don't understand it." Then I turned to leave, and froze, because someone was standing a few rows away watching me. A woman around my age. Silver hair tucked neatly beneath a navy scarf. She held a watering can in one hand and gave me the gentle, awkward smile of someone who had accidentally witnessed another person's private collapse. "I'm sorry," she said. "I wasn't trying to intrude." I wiped quickly at my face. "It's fine." She glanced toward my mother's grave, then back to me. "Regret visit?" I blinked. "What?" She offered a sad smile. "That's what I call them. The visits we make when we finally understand something too late." A short, humorless laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Yes," I admitted. "Something like that." She nodded as if she understood more than I had said. "My husband's over there," she said, gesturing toward another section. "Took me 3 years after he died to admit I'd spent half our marriage angry over things that didn't matter." I looked at her, at the calm in her expression, at the strange steadiness of someone who had clearly survived her own reckoning. She stepped closer and handed me a folded tissue from her pocket. "Life's cruel that way," she said. "Sometimes understanding comes after the lessons already cost us something." Then she smiled gently. "But understanding still counts." I watched her walk away among the graves, and for reasons I couldn't fully explain, her words settled somewhere deep inside me. Understanding still counts. On the drive home, I didn't feel better. Not exactly. Grief does not vanish because you finally name it. But for the first time since my birthday, I felt clear. My children had wounded me. I had wounded my mother. And perhaps both things could be true without either excusing the other. Pain explained behavior. It did not erase responsibility. When I pulled into my driveway, Rebecca's car was parked outside. My stomach tightened instantly. She stood on my front porch with her arms folded, sunglasses perched atop her head, looking annoyed rather than concerned. As if she had come to deal with an inconvenience. As if my pain had interrupted her schedule. The moment she saw me, she frowned. "Mom," she called. "Why haven't you answered your phone all day?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if this was how my mother had once looked at me. Rebecca stood on my porch with the expression she always wore when she believed someone else had inconvenienced her. It was a look I knew well. I had worn it myself once. "Mom," she said again, sharper this time. "I've been calling you for hours." I unlocked the front door without answering and stepped past her into the house. She followed, heels clicking against the hardwood. "Well," she demanded. "Where were you?" "At the cemetery." That stopped her. Her face shifted, not to guilt, not exactly. More to discomfort. The kind people feel when grief enters a conversation they weren't prepared to have. "Oh," she said after a beat. "I didn't know you were going there." "You didn't ask." The words came out calm. Too calm. She blinked. "Mom, if this is about your birthday, if—" Her mouth tightened. "I said if because I assumed you were upset." "Upset?" I repeated softly. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Rebecca exhaled dramatically and dropped her purse onto the kitchen counter. "Okay. Yes, we missed dinner. I know you're hurt. But honestly, Mom, you're acting like we committed some unforgivable crime." I stared at her. At the daughter I had carried for 9 months. Federal bathed. Sat beside through fevers and heartbreaks and nightmares. And suddenly I understood something else about motherhood. Love does not prevent disappointment. Sometimes it deepens it. "You all went to dinner together," I said. She hesitated. That was answer enough. "It was a last-minute thing," she said quickly. "Nathan got promoted, and everyone was already nearby. And everyone." Her eyes flickered. "Yes. Everyone except me." "Mom, don't do that." "Do what?" "Make everything so dramatic." There it was. The same phrase I had once used on my mother when she cried after I canceled Thanksgiving. I remembered saying it almost word for word. "Please stop making everything into such a big deal." My throat tightened. Rebecca kept talking, unaware she was reciting my own past back to me. "You know how busy everyone is. The kids have activities, Daniel works insane hours. I'm juggling a million things, I know." She stopped. Perhaps it was my tone. Perhaps it was the fact that I wasn't arguing. "I know exactly how busy life gets," I said quietly. Rebecca crossed her arms. "Then why are you punishing us over one dinner?" Punishing. That word nearly made me laugh. "You think this is about one dinner?" She looked uncertain for the first time. I walked to the dining room doorway and gestured toward the now empty table. The lace cloth was still there. The folded napkins. The birthday banner drooping slightly from where I had been too tired to take it down. "I cooked for 12 hours, I said. "I cleaned this house for 2 days. I sat here until after 9 waiting for my family to walk through that door." Rebecca looked away. It wasn't intentional. Yes, it was. The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. She turned back to me slowly. "You really think we deliberately hurt you?" I held her gaze. "Yes." Her face hardened instantly. "That's unfair." "No," I said. "What's unfair is pretending this was the first time." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Because now she knew where this was going. I stepped closer. "You forgot Christmas dinner 2 years ago. Mom, you left me out of Emma's recital because you said tickets were limited and then posted photos with 3 of your neighbors sitting in the audience. That's not. You moved Daniel's barbecue up 6 hours without telling me and laughed when I showed up to empty chairs." Each memory landed between us like a stone. Rebecca's expression shifted from irritation to something more defensive, more frightened. Because the truth sounds different when someone says it all at once. "You've been phasing me out of this family for years," I said. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Her jaw clenched. "No, what's ridiculous is this martyr act. Nobody is pushing you out. We're just busy adults with lives of our own." Busy adults. Again, my own words. Spoken back to me through younger lips. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my memory. "One day, Margaret, you will understand how silence can hurt more than cruelty." At the time, I had rolled my eyes. Now I understood. Rebecca grabbed her purse. "This is unbelievable," she snapped. You're making us into villains because we missed one birthday. No, I said softly. She paused. I'm realizing I raised you to think this was acceptable. Her face changed. Confusion first, then offense. What is that supposed to mean? I looked at her for a long moment, then answered with the most honest words I had spoken in years. It means I did this to my mother. Rebecca stared. The anger drained from her face, replaced by something uncertain. What? I abandoned my mother in smaller ways for years, I said. Missed birthdays, canceled holidays, forgot visits, made excuses, told her not to be dramatic when she was hurt. Rebecca said nothing. Her eyes searched my face as if trying to understand where this conversation had gone. And now, I whispered, I am living the life I taught my children was normal. The room went still. Rebecca's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in perhaps her entire life, my daughter had no defense ready. She stood there, stunned, while the truth settled over us both. And in that silence, I saw it. The faintest crack in her certainty. The first sign she might actually hear me. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and whatever softness had begun to surface disappeared instantly. She grabbed her bag. I can't do this right now, she muttered. Then she walked out, just like that, leaving me alone in the quiet house again. But this time, it felt different. Because for the first time, someone else was carrying the weight of what had been said. Emma's message arrived at 8:14 the next morning. Grandma, are you mad at Mom? I stared at the text for a long moment. Emma was 16 now, old enough to notice tension, old enough to ask questions, but still young. Enough to believe adults told the truth when they answered. I typed back carefully. No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. Just hurt. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, Mom cried last night. That surprised me. Rebecca had never been one for tears. Not in front of others, anyway. Even as a child, she hated vulnerability. If she scraped her knee, she'd grit her teeth and insist she was fine while blood ran down her shin. I set my phone down and stared out the kitchen window. A part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt ashamed for feeling that way. Then another message came. She said you told her she treats you the way you treated your mom. Is that true? My throat tightened. There it was. The question no one in my family had ever asked me. Not Rebecca. Not Daniel. Not even myself, until now. I typed slowly. Yes, it's true. A minute passed. Then, can I come over after school? Emma arrived at 4 carrying her backpack and the awkward seriousness of someone bracing for an adult conversation. She looked so much like Rebecca at that age it nearly hurt. Same chestnut hair. Same guarded eyes. But there was softness in Emma her mother had long ago buried. I made hot chocolate the way she liked it. Extra marshmallows, dash of cinnamon. And we sat at the kitchen table where so many hard conversations in this family had happened. She stared into her mug before speaking. Mom says you're being unfair. I nodded once. She might believe that. Emma frowned. But are you? Children have a way of asking impossible questions with complete sincerity. I folded my hands together. No, I said gently. But I understand why she thinks so. Emma waited. So I told her. Not everything. Not every shameful detail. But enough. I told her about my mother. About the birthdays I missed. The holidays I shortened. The excuses I made because I believed love would wait for me forever. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression slowly shifting from confusion to something older. Sadness, perhaps. My mom did that to you, she asked quietly when I finished. Not all at once, I said. That's never how these things happen. I looked down at my hands. They happen slowly. In little choices. Little neglects. Little moments where someone stops making space for you. Emma was silent. Then she asked the question I had not expected. Did great-grandma forgive you? The words hit like a blow. I swallowed hard. I don't know. Her brows knit together. You never asked? No, my voice was barely above a whisper. I understood too late. Emma stared into her cup for so long I thought she might not speak again. Then softly, I don't want that to happen to me. I blinked. What do you mean? She looked up. Her eyes shone with tears she was trying very hard not to let fall. I don't want to grow up and realize I hurt someone after they're gone. The room went very still. Because there it was. The entire lesson. Laid bare in the voice of a 16-year-old girl. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then don't wait as long as I did to learn it. She squeezed my fingers. And for the first time in days, something inside me eased. Not healed, but eased. When Rebecca's SUV pulled into the driveway an hour later, Emma stood. She slung her backpack over one shoulder, then hesitated. Grandma. Yes. She stepped around the table and hugged me. Hard. Not the quick, distracted embrace of obligation. A real hug. The kind people give when they understand someone is hurting. When she pulled away, she whispered, I'm sorry I wasn't here on your birthday. I kissed her forehead. It wasn't your fault. She shook her head. Maybe not. But I still should have called. Then she left, and I stood at the front window watching her climb into the passenger seat beside Rebecca. My daughter looked toward the house. Our eyes met through the glass. Emma was talking. Rebecca listened. Her face changed. Subtly, but enough for me to notice. A tension in her jaw. A crease between her brows. The look of someone hearing something uncomfortable. Something they had not expected from their own child. Then the car drove away. That evening, Daniel called. My son had not phoned me directly in nearly 3 months. I stared at his name lighting up my screen before answering. Hello. His voice came cautious. Mom. Rebecca told me what happened. I leaned back in my chair. Did she? He exhaled. She said you compared us to how you treated Grandma. I did. Silence. Then, is that true? The second person in 24 hours to ask me that. And somehow, it hurt more coming from him. Yes, I said. A long pause followed. Then Daniel spoke so quietly I nearly missed it. I remember her crying once when you canceled Christmas. My breath caught. He continued. I was maybe 10. She tried to hide it, but I saw her in the guest room. I closed my eyes. Memory after memory rose like ghosts. Things I had buried. Things my children had seen. Things I thought they were too young to understand. Children always understand more than we think. Daniel's voice softened. I guess maybe we learn more from watching than listening. Tears burned behind my eyes. Yes, I whispered. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. He said nothing for a moment. Then, I need to think about that. And he hung up. No apology. No resolution. But not denial either. Just thought. Reflection. The first crack. And sometimes, cracks are where healing begins. They arrived Saturday at noon. Rebecca stepped onto the porch first, shoulders rigid beneath her beige coat. Daniel close behind with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Neither looked angry. That would have been easier. Anger I understood. This was something heavier. Something quieter. I opened the door before they knocked. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Rebecca said, Can we come in? I stepped aside. They followed me into the living room. The same room where Christmas mornings had once begun with wrapping paper everywhere. Where Harold used to nap in his recliner after Thanksgiving dinner. Where my children had spent years sprawled on the carpet building forts and fighting over board games. Now it felt like a courtroom. No one sat at first. Daniel paced toward the window. Rebecca stood near the fireplace rubbing her hands together. Finally, I lowered myself into my armchair and said the only thing that made sense. Well, Rebecca swallowed. Emma asked me something after she got home from your house. I waited. She asked if I thought you ever cried after we left you out of things. Her voice thinned. She asked if I thought maybe I'd become someone she wouldn't be proud to grow into. The room went still. Daniel stopped pacing. Rebecca blinked rapidly and looked away. I didn't know what to say to her. The words were so raw, so unlike my daughter's usual polished certainty, that for a moment I saw the little girl she once had been, the one who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. Daniel finally spoke. I remembered things after our call. I looked at him. Things with Grandma. He sank into the couch across from me, elbows on his knees. She always looked happy when she saw us, he said quietly. But I remember how fast her face changed when we told her we couldn't stay long. Rebecca nodded slowly. I remember that too. Their voices carried no accusation, only dawning comprehension, the kind that hurts more than blame. Rebecca sat at last, perching on the edge of the sofa like she might flee at any second. I spent 2 nights replaying everything, she admitted. And the more I thought about it, she let out a shaky breath. The more I realized you're right. My chest tightened. She met my eyes. We didn't become careless overnight. We grew into it. Daniel added softly. Because it was normal to us. I said nothing. Because there was nothing to defend. Nothing to soften. Only truth. Rebecca's eyes filled suddenly. You really did love Grandma, didn't you? The question nearly shattered me. Yes, I whispered. Then how did you do that to her? I closed my eyes. Because that was the question beneath everything, wasn't it? How do people hurt the ones they love? How do good intentions rot into neglect? How does love coexist with selfishness? When you're young, I said slowly. You think love is enough. You think if people know you love them, they'll understand when life gets busy. When you cancel, when you postpone, when you assume there will always be more time. I opened my eyes. But love without effort becomes memory. And memory doesn't keep people warm. Rebecca broke then. A single tear slipped free. Then another. I didn't realize, she whispered. Mom, I swear to God, I didn't realize. I believed her. That was the cruelest part. She had not meant to become hurtful. Neither had I. Daniel rubbed a hand over his face. When Nathan suggested dinner for the promotion, he said, Rebecca said, maybe we should make it your birthday dinner too. And I said you'd probably want something quieter at home. I stared at him. Rebecca's face went pale. Daniel looked sick. We convinced ourselves we were doing what you'd prefer, he finished. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because that exact excuse had lived in my own mouth 20 years earlier. Mom probably doesn't want to drive all the way here. She gets tired easily. She'd rather stay home. The lies we tell ourselves when convenience matters more than compassion. Rebecca covered her mouth with her hand. Oh my God. Yes, I said softly. That's how it happens. Silence filled the room. Not hostile silence. Mourning silence. The sound of three people grieving the same truth from different sides. After a while, Rebecca wiped her face and whispered, What do we do now? I had not expected that question. Not because I thought they would not ask. Because for most of my life, I believed acknowledgement was enough. That if people admitted wrongdoing, healing naturally followed. Age teaches otherwise. No one gets to undo it, I said quietly. They both looked at me. You can't undo what happened to me. I can't undo what happened to my mother. Some wounds stay. Rebecca's tears fell harder. Daniel stared at the floor. But, I continued, you can choose what happens next. Rebecca nodded weakly. How? I took a slow breath. By understanding this isn't about one forgotten birthday. It's about whether I matter in your lives only when convenient. Daniel lifted his head. You do matter. Then prove it. Neither flinched. Good. Because healing without accountability is performance. Rebecca swallowed. You're right. Daniel nodded. What do you need from us? The question nearly undid me. Because for years I had needed so much and asked for so little. I folded my trembling hands. I need honesty. No more polite excuses when you simply don't want to include me. They nodded. I need effort that isn't prompted by guilt. Another nod. And I need to know my worth in this family. Isn't tied to what I provide. Babysitting, gifts, holidays, emotional labor. I am not useful furniture to be brought out when needed and ignored when not. Rebecca burst into fresh tears. Daniel's jaw tightened, as if holding back his own. Rebecca crossed the room suddenly and knelt beside my chair. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Mom. Daniel followed a second later. And then my children, my grown children, my flawed children, my children who had hurt me in the very way I once hurt someone else, held on to me and cried. We stayed that way a long time. 3 generations of pain and guilt and love collapsing into one tangled moment on a Saturday afternoon. No miracle occurred. No years of hurt vanished. But something shifted. Something honest. When they finally pulled away, eyes red and voices raw, Daniel asked softly, Do you think Grandma forgave you? The question landed like prayer. I looked toward the window where pale autumn light spilled across the floor. I hope so, I said. Rebecca squeezed my hand. Then maybe someday you'll forgive us too. I studied my children. Really studied them. And for the first time since my birthday, I no longer saw only the people who hurt me. I saw the frightened adults realizing they had become what they never meant to be. I'm trying, I said. And that was the truth. For 2 full weeks, Rebecca called me every day. Not long conversations. Not dramatic apologies. Just small things. Did you get home okay from church? Have you taken your blood pressure medication? Emma wants to know if you still have that brownie recipe. Simple questions. Ordinary effort. The kind that should not have felt extraordinary, but did. Daniel called too. Sometimes only for 5 minutes on his commute home. Sometimes just to ask if I needed help with something around the house. I noticed they no longer waited for me to initiate contact. They came to me first. And though I did not say it aloud, I noticed. I noticed everything. Then, 2 Sundays later, Rebecca invited me to dinner. Not with hesitation. Not with guilt woven awkwardly into her voice. Just plainly. Sunday at 5, she said. We'd love for you to come. We'd love for you. Such a small phrase. Yet it stayed with me all week. I stood in front of my closet for nearly 20 minutes deciding what to wear. That may sound foolish to younger people, but when you have spent years feeling slowly erased, being intentionally included can make you feel like a girl before her first date. In the end, I chose a navy dress Harold always liked and a pearl necklace I had not worn since his funeral. When I arrived at Rebecca's house, Emma opened the door before I knocked. "You're here," she said, throwing her arms around me. That alone nearly broke my heart. Children greet with honesty. If she had not wanted me there, I would have known. But then I stepped inside and stopped cold. The dining table was set beautifully. Candles, flowers, my favorite white serving dishes. And in the center of the table, a birthday cake. Not store-bought. Homemade. Slightly lopsided. Poorly frosted. Beautiful. Written across the top in shaky pink icing were the words, "Happy 70th birthday, Grandma." My hand flew to my mouth. Rebecca stood near the kitchen doorway, twisting a dish towel in her hands. Daniel beside her, neither smiling. Both watching me the way people watch someone they fear they may have already hurt beyond repair. "We know it's late," Rebecca said softly. "And we know this doesn't fix anything," Daniel added. "But we wanted to do it right this time." I could not speak. Emma came to stand beside me. "We made the cake ourselves," she whispered proudly. It collapsed twice. A laugh escaped me then, sudden and wet with tears. Rebecca's own eyes filled. "We also," she glanced toward the hallway. "We have something else." She disappeared for a moment and returned holding a framed photograph. When she handed it to me, my breath caught. It was my mother, young, smiling, standing in her garden in the blue apron she wore every spring. A photograph I had not seen in years. "We found it in the albums you gave me after Dad died," Rebecca said. "Emma suggested we put it out tonight." Emma stepped forward shyly. "So she could celebrate too." That did it. Every wall I had spent decades building shattered at once. I sat down hard in the nearest chair and cried into both hands. Not polite tears. Not restrained ones. The kind of crying that leaves your chest aching. The kind grief saves for moments too beautiful and too painful to survive quietly. Rebecca knelt beside me. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "For all of it." Daniel crouched beside her. "We should have done better." I lowered my hands slowly and looked at them. My children. No longer defensive. No longer minimizing. Only humbled. Only human. Then I looked at my mother's photograph. At her soft face frozen forever in a moment before age and loneliness had touched her. And for one impossible second, it felt as though the whole room held more than the living. As though somehow she was there. Watching. Witnessing. Perhaps even smiling. I touched the edge of the frame and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." Rebecca frowned softly. "What did you say?" I wiped my face. "I said I think your grandmother deserved this dinner more than I do." Rebecca shook her head immediately. "No," she said firmly. "She deserved it then." The truth of that landed so hard it stole my breath. Yes, she had deserved it then. My mother had deserved flowers while she lived. Cake while she could taste it. Phone calls while she could answer. Love while she could still feel its warmth. Not apologies at a gravestone. Not regret after burial. I stared at her photograph and thought, the dead receive our flowers. But they cannot smell them. The living can. That realization changed something permanent in me. We ate dinner together that night. Really together. No phones at the table. No one rushing. No one treating my presence as decorative. Emma told me about school. Daniel teased her about a boy she liked. Rebecca laughed so hard at one point she snorted and immediately looked mortified, which made us all laugh harder. And for a few beautiful hours, it felt like family again. Not perfect. Not untouched by history. But real. When dessert came, Emma insisted I make a wish before blowing out the candles. I stared at the flickering light, at the faces around me, at my mother's photograph beside the cake, and I wished for something I had once thought impossible. Not revenge, not justice, not even apology, just this, enough. Time to do better than before. I blew out the candles. Everyone cheered, and for the first time since my 70th birthday, the sound did not hurt. Later, as I gathered my coat to leave, Rebecca walked me to the door. She hesitated before speaking. "There's one more thing." I turned. She swallowed hard. "We've been talking." She glanced back toward the dining room where the others laughed together. "About Thanksgiving." My heart tightened. "What about it?" Rebecca's eyes filled again. "We want to host this year." A pause. "But only if you'll let us do it at your house." I blinked. She smiled shakily. "The way Grandma used to." And in that moment, I understood exactly what she was offering. Not just inclusion, restoration, memory, honor, a chance to rebuild something that had once been broken long before her. I nodded once, unable to trust my voice. Rebecca hugged me tightly, and as I held my daughter, I thought of my mother, of all the women before us, of all the wounds passed down in silence, and all the healing that might begin when someone finally chooses to speak. Thanksgiving arrived cold and bright. The kind of November morning where the windows fog if you stand too close to them, and the whole house smells like butter before noon. For the first time in years, my kitchen was full again. Rebecca stood at the stove, basting the turkey with fierce concentration. Daniel argued with Emma over the correct way to mash potatoes, and my youngest grandson ran circles through the dining room until Rebecca threatened to ban him from dessert. I stood in the center of it all holding a tray of rolls and thought, so this is what home used to feel like. Not perfect, not quiet, not orderly, alive. My mother's old dining table gleamed beneath polished silver, and the lace runner I had once nearly donated in a fit of grief. Her china sat at each place setting, the same plates she had used every Thanksgiving of my childhood. Rebecca had insisted. If we're doing this, she said while helping me set the table that morning, we do it properly. And somehow hearing my daughter say that, hearing her care about traditions she once dismissed as old-fashioned, had moved me more than I. Let's show. By 5 o'clock, everyone was seated. Rebecca and Daniel on either side of me. Emma across from me. The younger grandchildren squirming in their chairs. Even Nathan looked more relaxed than usual. I glanced around the table. At the family I had thought I might lose. At the family my mother had once dreamed I would build better than she had. My throat tightened. Daniel lifted his glass. To Mom, he said. Everyone turned toward me. His voice softened. For teaching us some lessons the hard way, and loving us enough to tell the truth when it mattered. My eyes burned instantly. Glasses lifted around the table. To Grandma. To Mom. To Margaret. We drank. And for a little while, everything felt healed. Too healed. That should have warned me. Because families rarely untangle decades of pain in one dinner. Halfway through dessert, Emma set down her fork. Her face had that same serious look she wore the day she first came to my house after my birthday. Can I say something? The table quieted. Rebecca frowned slightly. Of course, sweetheart. Emma took a breath, then looked directly at her mother. I think we should invite Aunt Lisa next year. Silence. Absolute silence. Rebecca went still beside me. Daniel lowered his fork. Even the children sensed something had shifted. Nathan glanced awkwardly between them. My stomach tightened. Because I knew that name. Lisa. Rebecca's older sister. My firstborn. The daughter who had not spoken to Rebecca in nearly 9 years. The daughter who had not been inside this house in over a decade. The daughter whose absence no one at this table ever discussed. Rebecca's jaw tightened instantly. We are not doing this here. Emma didn't back down. Why not? Because it's not your business. Emma's cheeks flushed. It is my business. She's my aunt. Rebecca's voice sharpened. She made choices that removed her from this family. The words struck the table like glass shattering. And suddenly, I understood. There it was. Another silence. Another exclusion. Another empty chair no one acknowledged. I looked around the table. At the discomfort. At the eyes dropping to plates. At the way everyone was pretending not to notice. Exactly the way we used to pretend not to notice when my mother's chair sat empty. Emma's voice trembled. Or did you push her out the way you pushed Grandma out? Rebecca stood so fast her chair scraped violently across the floor. Emma. But the damage was done. No, the truth was out. Rebecca looked mortified. Daniel stared at his daughter in stunned silence. Emma's face had gone pale, but she held her ground. No one ever explains what happened, she whispered. Everyone just says Aunt Lisa is difficult and not to ask. But if this family is trying to stop repeating old mistakes, then maybe we should stop pretending people disappear for no reason. My heart pounded, because I had wondered, for years, about the daughter who once stormed out after a brutal argument with Rebecca and never truly came back. About the granddaughter who never met her cousins. About the Christmas cards that stopped. About the silence no one explained. Rebecca's face crumpled, not with anger, with panic. Emma, she said shakily, please stop. No, the whole room froze. My 16-year-old granddaughter looked around that table with tears in her eyes and said the bravest thing anyone had said in years. If we learned anything from Grandma's birthday, It should be that pretending someone doesn't matter because things got messy is wrong. Rebecca burst into tears. Real tears. The kind that leave no room for pride. And in that moment, I knew. Whatever happened with Lisa, my daughter had not told us the whole story. Daniel spoke quietly. Rebecca, she covered her face. I tried, she sobbed. I tried for years. No one moved. No one interrupted. She lowered her hands slowly. When Dad died, her voice cracked. Lisa wanted to sell the house immediately. She said you should move into assisted living. She said staying here alone wasn't practical. I went cold. My pulse roared in my ears. Because I had heard those words before. Rebecca continued through tears. I told her no. I said Mom would decide in her own time. We fought. She accused me of manipulating you. Said I only cared because I wanted the house someday. The room stayed breathless. Rebecca wiped at her face. She told me I'd become selfish, cold. Just like, her voice failed. Just like who? I whispered. Rebecca met my eyes. Just like you used to be with Grandma. The room tilted. My breath stopped. She said watching you neglect Grandma taught us all how to make excuses for cruelty. Rebecca swallowed hard. And she said if I kept becoming that person, she wanted no part of this family. No one moved. No one breathed. Emma looked stunned. Daniel stared at his sister like he was seeing her for the first time. And I sat frozen. Because suddenly the timeline changed. The story changed. Lisa had not simply vanished. She had seen the pattern before the rest of us. And when no one listened, she left. Rebecca's shoulders shook. I hated her for saying it, she whispered. Because deep down I knew she was right. Tears burned my eyes. All this time. Another daughter. Another fracture. Another consequence of wounds I thought began and ended with me. They hadn't. They had spread further than I knew. Across children. Across siblings. Across generations. The room stayed silent for a long time before Emma whispered. Then maybe we should call her. Rebecca stared at the table. And in a voice barely audible, she said, I don't know if she'll answer. After everyone left that night, the house fell quiet in a way that no longer felt peaceful. It felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the half-empty pie plates and coffee cups still scattered across the table, but I could not bring myself to clean. My mind was elsewhere. On Lisa. On the daughter I had not thought about deeply enough in years. On the terrible possibility that while I had been grieving the pain done to me, I had overlooked the one child who saw the truth first. I climbed the stairs slowly and went to the linen closet at the end of the hall. Behind old blankets and winter coats sat the cedar chest where I kept things I was not ready to throw away. The box of family papers was buried at the bottom. Old report cards, birthday cards, school drawings. And there, folded between two photo albums, a sealed envelope. My name in Lisa's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The paper inside was creased and yellowed with age. The date in the corner made my stomach drop. 9 years ago. Written the week after she disappeared from Thanksgiving and never came back. My hands trembled as I read. Mom, if you're reading this, then maybe one day you were finally ready. I love you. That's what makes this harder. I need distance from this family because I cannot keep pretending everything is normal when it isn't. Grandma spent years lonely while everyone called it busyness. Then Dad died. And within months, I watched the same conversations start around you. Selling the house. Downsizing. Practicality. What's best for Mom? No one asked what you wanted. My vision blurred. I kept reading. Rebecca has become someone who explains away cruelty the same way you once did. And Daniel follows whatever keeps the peace. No one sees it because no one wants to. A tear slid down my cheek. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overreacting. But I refuse to stand by and watch this family repeat itself while pretending love excuses neglect. Then the final paragraph. The one that stole the air from my lungs. You taught us many beautiful things, Mom. But you also taught us that women in this family survive by swallowing hurt and calling it understanding. I won't do that anymore. When this family is ready to be honest, call me. Until then, I choose peace over proximity. Love always. Lisa. I sat on the bedroom floor with the letter in my lap and wept. Not because Lisa had been cruel. Because she had been brave. Braver than I had ever allowed myself to be. She had seen the truth. Named it. Refused to participate in it. And I had let her become the family villain because it was easier than listening. I thought of every holiday where someone muttered, Lisa always was dramatic. Every birthday where Rebecca rolled her eyes and called her impossible. Every time I accepted the version of the story most convenient to everyone else. I had done to Lisa what I once did to my mother. Dismissed pain because acknowledging it required discomfort. The pattern was deeper than I imagined. It was not just neglect. It was denial. Silence. Punishing whoever spoke the truth first. By midnight, I knew what I had to do. The question was whether she would let me. My fingers shook as I scrolled through old contacts until I found the number I had not dialed in nearly a decade. Still there. Still saved. Still labeled simply. Lisa. I stared at it for nearly a full minute before pressing call. Straight to voicemail. Of course. I almost hung up. Instead, when the beep sounded, I spoke. My voice broke on the first word. Lisa, it's Mom. Silence pressed around me. I forced myself to continue. I found your letter tonight. My breath trembled. You were right. The words tasted like confession. About all of it. I wiped tears from my face. I should have listened to you. I should have protected you when everyone turned you into the problem for telling the truth. My voice cracked entirely then. I'm so sorry. I pressed a hand to my mouth and cried once before continuing. You were the bravest person in this family, and we punished you for it. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming downstairs. If you never want to speak to me again, I whispered, I will understand. A long breath. But if there is any part of you willing to try, I swallowed hard. I'm finally ready to be honest. I ended the call and sat there shaking. No relief came. No peace. Because apologies are not transactions. You do not confess expecting absolution. You confess because truth is owed. I barely slept. Every sound of my phone made my heart race. Nothing. By morning, still nothing. By noon, nothing. By evening, I had nearly convinced myself she would never respond. Then, at 7:42 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. I answered breathlessly. Hello. Silence. Then, a woman's voice. Older. Softer. But unmistakable. Mom. My knees nearly gave out. For a moment, I could not breathe. My hand gripped the kitchen counter so tightly my knuckles turned white. Lisa. I whispered. Her voice came again. Older now, steadier, but still my daughter's. Yes. That single word nearly broke me. 9 years. 9 years of silence. 9 years of birthdays missed, holidays passed, photographs taken. Without her, stories told as if she had simply vanished into thin air. And now here she was. Real. Breathing. Waiting. I sank slowly into a chair before my legs gave out. I didn't think you'd call. A soft exhale crackled through the line. I almost didn't. Fair. Painfully fair. Tears filled my eyes again. I deserve that. Silence. Then Lisa said quietly, I listened to your voicemail 6 times before calling back. I pressed trembling fingers to my lips. I meant every word. I know. That startled me. I closed my eyes. Then why does your voice sound like you're bracing for impact? A sad little laugh escaped her. Because apologies don't erase 9 years, Mom. No, I whispered. They don't. The honesty of that seemed to soften something between us. Just slightly. Lisa spoke again, her voice lower now. Do you know what hurt most? I swallowed hard. No, that you never called before now. The words landed clean and sharp. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. And somehow that hurt more. I told myself you hated me, she continued. I told myself at least if you hated me. The silence made sense. My breath caught painfully. Oh, Lisa. But a part of me always knew the truth. Her voice trembled for the first time. It was easier for everyone to pretend I was difficult than admit I said something true. Tears slid freely down my face. Yes, I whispered. That's exactly what happened. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I said the hardest words of all. I failed you. She inhaled sharply. You tried to protect me. I continued. And instead of listening, I let the rest of the family punish you for making them uncomfortable. My voice broke. You stood alone because I lacked the courage to stand beside you. Silence. Long enough that I feared I had lost her. Then, a quiet sob on the other end of the line. I needed you, she whispered. 3 words. That was all. 3 words that cut deeper than any accusation. I bent forward in my chair and cried. I know, I choked out. I know, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. Neither of us tried to stop crying after that. There are moments in life when dignity becomes irrelevant. When truth matters. More than composure. This was one of them. Eventually, Lisa steadied herself enough to speak. So what changed? I wiped my face. My birthday. She went quiet. They left me alone, I said softly. And for the first time in my life, I understood exactly what abandonment feels like when it comes in polite clothes. A bitter breath escaped her. And then I realized I had felt it before. I stared at the rain beginning to streak across the kitchen window. Just not from this side of it. She understood immediately. Grandma. Yes. The words sat between us like a prayer. Lisa exhaled shakily. I always hated watching that happen. I know. I used to sit with her after everyone left and pretend not to notice when she cried. My hand flew to my mouth. Oh God. She loved you anyway, Lisa whispered. That was the worst part. She always defended you. I closed my eyes and let the grief wash over me. Of course she had. That sounded exactly like my mother. Still protecting me while I failed her. Still loving me while I disappointed her. Lisa took a breath. I didn't leave because I hated anyone, Mom. I know. I left because I was scared I'd become like all of you if I stayed. That truth silenced me. Because perhaps the most painful thing a child can say is, I had to leave in order not to become you. And perhaps the most painful thing a parent can realize is, they were right. After a long moment, I whispered, Are you happy? The question surprised her. What? Your life? I said gently. Are you happy? Her voice softened. Yes. A small smile found my lips through tears. Good. Another pause. Then, I have a daughter, Lisa said quietly. My entire body went still. What? She's 8. The room tilted. 8. 8 years old. A granddaughter I never knew existed. A child who had grown through first words and first days of school and scraped knees and bedtime stories. Without me. Because of choices I had made. My voice trembled. You have a daughter? Yes. What's her name? Claire. I whispered the name like something holy. Claire. My granddaughter. A child I had missed entirely. Fresh grief tore through me. How did I not know? Because I couldn't trust this family around her, Lisa said gently. Not cruelly. Not angrily. Simply honestly. And the truth of it left no room for defense. I understand, I whispered. Silence. Then, softly. If things are really different now, my heart pounded. Yes. Lisa inhaled. Maybe you can meet her. The world stopped. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. You mean that? Yes. Tears came fresh and hot. Yes, I breathed. God, yes. Whenever you're ready. However you're ready. Lisa's voice shook. One step at a time, Mom. Yes, I whispered. One step at a time. And for the first time in nearly a decade, hope entered where regret had lived. I arrived 20 minutes early, then spent 19 of those minutes pretending not to watch every car that pulled into the parking lot. The coffee shop sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd, a small brick place with fogged windows and handwritten chalkboard menus. I had passed it dozens of times over the years without noticing it. Now it felt like the center of the world. My hands would not stop shaking. I had changed outfits 3 times that morning, settled on a soft gray sweater and pearl earrings. Then worried pearls were too formal. Then worried no earrings made me look careless. At 70 years old, I had somehow become nervous enough to resemble a teenager before prom. Because in 5 minutes, I would meet the granddaughter whose first 8 years I had missed. The bell above the cafe door chimed. I turned and forgot how to breathe. Lisa stood there. Older, yes. A few silver strands in her dark hair. Lines at the corners of her eyes that had not been there 9 years ago. But still unmistakably my daughter. Still the child I once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms. Still the teenager who used to slam doors when angry and cry in secret afterward. Beside her stood a little girl in a yellow coat clutching Lisa's hand. Chestnut curls. Wide solemn eyes. My eyes. The world narrowed to that child. Lisa offered a small, careful smile. Hi, Mom. I stood too fast, nearly knocking over my chair. Hi. My voice cracked. Lisa glanced down at the little girl. Claire, this is your grandmother. The child looked up at me with frank curiosity. Not fear. Not resentment. Just interest. Are you really my grandma? She asked. The question hit me like a punch. I nodded, tears already rising. Yes, I whispered. If you'll have me. Claire considered that for exactly 1 second. Then asked, do grandmas give hugs? Lisa let out a startled laugh. I made a sound somewhere between a sob and one myself. Yes, I managed. Usually too many. Claire stepped forward immediately. I dropped to my knees just as she wrapped her small arms around my neck. And in that moment, holding the warm, solid weight of the granddaughter I thought I might never know, something inside me broke open and healed all at once. I buried my face in her hair and cried silently. She smelled like strawberries and shampoo, like childhood, like all the years I had missed. When I finally let go, Claire peered at my wet face and asked very seriously, "Are you leaking?" Lisa laughed. A real laugh, warm and unguarded. And hearing it after so many silent years nearly made me cry all over again. We sat for 2 hours. Claire talked enough for 5 people. She told me about school, about her favorite teacher, about the hamster she desperately wanted but was apparently not emotionally ready for. Every word felt like stolen treasure. I listened as if memorizing her, because in a way I was. While Claire colored on a napkin with the crayons the waitress brought over, Lisa and I finally spoke like 2 people no longer pretending. Not avoiding, not circling, just honest. She asked about family a lot when she was younger. Lisa said quietly while Claire drew nearby. I swallowed. What did you tell her? The truth. I braced myself. Lisa met my eyes. I told her some people love each other deeply but hurt each other because they don't know how to face hard truths. My throat tightened. That was kinder than I deserved. She looked down at her coffee. I wasn't trying to be kind. I was trying not to make her carry bitterness that belonged to me. God, my daughter had become wiser than I ever was at her age. Perhaps wiser than I had ever been. I'm proud of you, I whispered. She blinked hard and looked away. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she asked quietly, "Did Grandma ever know?" I frowned. "Know what?" "That you understood in the end." My eyes filled instantly. I looked down at my folded hands. "No," I whispered. "She died before I learned the lesson." Lisa nodded slowly, then placed her hand over mine. "Maybe not." I looked up. She gave me a sad, gentle smile. "But if love means anything, maybe people know more than we think." That sentence settled into my heart like something sacred. Claire suddenly held up her drawing. "Look." I blinked tears away and took it. 3 stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun. One tall, one medium, one small. Above them she had written in crooked letters, "Me mom Grandma." My hand flew to my mouth. Claire beamed. "That's us. Us." Such a tiny word. Such a miraculous thing. When we finally stood to leave, Claire hugged me again without hesitation. "Can I see you next week?" she asked. I looked at Lisa. She smiled. "Yes," she said. I nearly broke apart right there in the coffee shop. "Yes," I whispered to Claire. "I'd love that." Lisa lingered as Claire ran ahead toward the car. Then she turned back to me. "We're not fixed," she said softly. "I know. There's still a lot to rebuild." "I know." Her eyes filled. "But this is a start." I nodded. "Yes," I whispered. "It is." Then, after a pause, she stepped forward and hugged me. My daughter. My lost child. My second chance. I held her with everything in me. And when she finally pulled away, both of us were crying. Rebecca stood on my porch with tears already running down her face. For one strange second, I thought I might still be dreaming. I had only been home from meeting Lisa and Claire for an hour. Claire's drawing still sat on my coffee table, 3 crooked stick figures beneath a bright yellow sun. Me mom Grandma. The paper trembled in my hand as I opened the door wider. Rebecca looked at the drawing, then at me. "You saw her?" It was not a question. I nodded slowly. "Yes." Rebecca covered her mouth. A broken sound escaped her. "Oh God." I stepped aside. She entered without another word and sat heavily on the couch, shoulders shaking. I waited. Eventually she whispered, "Emma told me." I lowered myself into the armchair across from her. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then Rebecca asked the question I think had been haunting her since Thanksgiving. "Does she hate me?" My chest tightened. "No," I said gently. "But she's hurt." Rebecca stared at the floor. "That's worse." "Yes." It was. Hatred can be easier to survive than hurt. Hatred at least leaves room for anger. Pain leaves only grief. "She was right all those years ago," Rebecca whispered. "And I made her into the villain because I couldn't stand hearing it." I said nothing. Because some truths need silence around them. Rebecca wiped her face. "I keep thinking about how easy it was." Her voice cracked. How easy it was to decide she was the problem instead of asking whether she was trying to warn us. I looked toward Claire's drawing on the table. "That's how patterns survive," I said quietly. "Not because people are evil. Because denial is easier than reflection." Rebecca cried harder. I want to fix it. You may not be able to fix it. She nodded miserably. I know. Then she looked at me, small, fragile, no longer the polished, capable woman who controlled every room she entered. Just my daughter. A hurting one. What do I do? I took a long breath before answering. The same thing I did. She frowned. Tell the truth. Apologize without excuses. And understand forgiveness may come slowly, or not at all. Rebecca nodded through tears, then whispered the question that shattered me. Do you think you would have changed if they hadn't abandoned you? I froze, because no one had asked me that. No one had spoken aloud the ugliest truth beneath everything. Would I have learned if I had not been made to suffer first? Would I have understood if pain had not reached me personally? I thought of my mother, of Lisa, of the years lost. Then I answered honestly. No, Rebecca broke all over again, because she understood what that meant. Sometimes pain is the only teacher pride listens to. She cried for a long time, and when the storm passed, she stood slowly and looked toward the drawing again. Do you think Lisa will ever speak to me? I considered, then said the truest thing I could. If she does, it will be because she chooses peace, not because you are owed it. Rebecca nodded. I understand. She moved toward the door, then stopped, turned back, and whispered, Thank you for not giving up on me when you finally saw who I'd become. The tears came so suddenly I could barely speak. I almost lost you once, I whispered. I won't make that mistake twice. She crossed the room and hugged me. And this time, it felt different. Not reconciliation, not fully, but humility, the beginning of earned healing. Spring came slowly that year. Then all at once, the trees outside my window bloomed. The days lengthened, and little by little, my family changed. Not perfectly, not magically, but genuinely. Rebecca began calling Lisa. At first, the calls went unanswered. Then one day, Lisa texted back. Months later, they met for coffee. No miracle followed. No dramatic embrace. But they spoke. And sometimes, speaking is miracle enough. Daniel began bringing the children by every Sunday. Not because he needed childcare. Just because. Emma spent afternoons baking with me in the kitchen. Claire joined us often. Two granddaughters from two fractured branches of the same family, laughing together over burnt cookies and spilled flour. Watching them felt like witnessing history rewrite itself. One evening, nearly a year after my 70th birthday, we gathered again around my dining table. Every chair filled. Rebecca, Daniel, Lisa, the grandchildren, even Nathan. Conversation and laughter rose warm beneath the chandelier. My mother's china gleamed under candlelight. Claire sat beside me, coloring quietly on the edge of a napkin. Then she looked up and asked, Grandma, why are you crying? I touched my cheek. I had not realized I was. And I smiled. Because I'm happy, sweetheart. That was true. But not the whole truth. The whole truth was this. I was crying because healing had come too late for some things. Too late for my mother. Too late for the birthdays I missed. Too late for the years Lisa spent alone. Too late for all the apologies buried with the dead. But not too late for this. Not too late for truth. Not too late for humility. Not too late to stop handing pain down like inheritance. I looked around that table, at the family I had nearly lost, at the wounds we had named, at the love we had finally learned to make visible. And I understood something my mother had tried to teach me all along. Love is not proven by feeling. It is proven by showing up, by choosing people again and again before it is too late.